It was meant to be just another celebrity interview, until Samuel L. Jackson stared into the camera and said something about Trump that made the entire country fall silent. It began with one line that froze every late-night viewer. Samuel L. Jackson, sitting across from host Brian Kelly on Nightline Forum, leaned forward, locked eyes with the lens, and said, "I've heard things come out of that man's mouth that no president should ever say. Not in private. Not in public. Not ever." The crowd gasped. Brian didn't move. No one knew whether to laugh or brace for impact. Samuel wasn't joking. A thick, heavy silence spread across the studio, one of those moments where even the audience's breathing feels loud. He stayed calm, sharp, steady, each word landing like a stone dropped into still water. Brian finally broke the tension. "Samuel, are you saying you personally heard President Trump make comments like that?" Samuel didn't hesitate. "I'm not saying like that. I'm saying exactly that. I was standing right there when he said it." The room shifted. A couple of uneasy laughs slipped out. Brian tried to regain control, but Samuel was already driving the conversation, his voice carrying the same commanding power he brings to every role. He explained that months earlier, he'd attended a celebrity golf charity event at Trump National Golf Club in Palm Beach. It was supposed to be simple, cameras, cocktails, polite smiles, but according to Samuel, what he heard that day was unlike anything he'd ever heard from a sitting president. Brian's cue card slid out of his hand. Producers behind the glass motioned frantically, trying to steer the segment away, but it was already far past saving. Samuel continued, "He said Hollywood only loves me when I make them money. The rest of the time they pretend to be woke." Then he laughed, and after that, he said something I can't repeat on TV about who he thinks really controls the industry. He paused. "Let's just say, it wasn't pretty." Someone in the audience gasped loud enough for everyone to hear. The camera cut to Brian, whose usual charming smile had vanished. He looked like he had stepped into something he wasn't prepared for. Samuel didn't blink. "You can't lead a country when you don't respect half the people living in it." The crowd erupted. Some clapped because they agreed, others because they were stunned. Producers cut to commercial early. Too late. The moment had already detonated across the internet. When the show returned, Brian tried to lighten things up. Samuel wasn't interested. He hadn't come to entertain. He'd come to say what he'd been holding back. "People keep saying celebrities should stay out of politics," he said. "But when politics walks into your life, your industry, your dinner table, you don't get the privilege of silence anymore." The audience rose to its feet. Even Brian cracked a smile, though the voice in his earpiece was probably begging him to change the subject. After the show ended, Samuel left quietly. No interviews, no statements. Cameras followed him to his SUV, but he didn't speak another word. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than anything he'd said. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere. Hashtags like #Samuel said it and #Jackson vs. Trump shot straight to the top of Twitter. Millions watched, some cheering, some furious. In LA, talk show writers rewrote their monologues. In Washington, White House aides scrambled to prepare statements. Samuel hadn't just spoken, he delivered the opening blow in what would become one of the biggest political storms of the decade. What shocked people most was what friends revealed afterward. Samuel had been waiting for the right moment to speak. That night, he finally decided. The country went to bed with one question echoing everywhere, from homes to group chats to newsrooms. What did the president say that disgusted Samuel L. Jackson so much that he looked genuinely shaken retelling it on live TV? Before anyone could answer, details from that mysterious Palm Beach golf event began resurfacing, sending the story in a direction no one expected. The next morning, news outlets scrambled. Every detail from that golf event became headline material. Guest lists, photos, shaky videos, everything was suddenly under a microscope. But the people who had actually been there didn't need reminders. It had been late spring, humid, bright Florida sun, the kind that makes you squint. Donors, celebrities, politicians drifting around with drinks, posing for photos they'd pretend not to remember. Samuel wasn't there for politics. He went because his friend, retired athlete Jerome Tate, invited him. He almost didn't go. Jerome convinced him, "It's for the kids' hospital, man. One game. A few pictures. You're out." Sounded simple. It wasn't. The crowd was loaded with executives, suits, cigars, whispered deals, Trump was already holding court near the first tee, red cap, wide grin, surrounded by donors hanging on every word. Jerome nudged Samuel. "There he is. You ready?" Samuel shot him a look. "Man, I came to hit golf balls, not talk politics." But Trump had other plans that he spotted Samuel immediately and called out, "Sam. My favorite actor, come here." He slapped a hand on Samuel's back as cameras snapped. Samuel forced a polite smile. "Sure thing, Mr. President." The round began harmlessly enough, jokes, small talk, golf banter. Then, halfway through, the tone changed. Trump started talking about Hollywood, the media, and the people who pretend to hate him. Samuel stayed mostly quiet, until Trump leaned in and said something that made Samuel's grip tighten around his golf club. "They all come running when there's money involved," that was Trump's point. "Hollywood doesn't care who's president," he said. "They care who pays." Jerome shot Samuel a quick look, quietly urging him not to react. But Trump wasn't finished. "And another thing," he added with a chuckle, "you ever notice who runs all those studios? Who writes the scripts? It's not who people think." Samuel slowly turned toward him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Trump smirked. "You know what I mean. You've been in the business long enough." The air went cold. Even the nearby Secret Service shifted, sensing the tension. Jerome cleared his throat, desperately trying to steer them away. "Hey, how about another round?" Trump brushed it off with a laugh, waved at a few cameras, and strolled toward the next hole, but Samuel stayed still, eyes fixed on his back. Later at the clubhouse, the conversation flared up again, this time with more people around. Trump, feeling comfortable, started talking freely about actors, directors, and race in entertainment. Every remark landed like a tossed grenade, drawing uneasy glances from the table. One moment stayed with everyone there. A producer joked that Hollywood types were too sensitive, and Trump responded, "That's because they've convinced themselves they're the victims. But they're the ones with all the money, all the power, they just don't want to admit it." Samuel leaned back, watching him. "You really believe that?" Trump shrugged. "I call it how I see it. People love when I say what they're thinking." "No," Samuel said quietly. "You say what you want people to think. There's a difference." For a moment, no one moved. The whole table froze. Just like that studio months later, Trump gave him a tight smile, one that didn't touch his eyes. "You've always been a little too serious, Sam. That's why you'll never get it. This is entertainment. All of it." That was the moment Samuel reached his limit, that he pushed back his chair, grabbed his jacket, and said, "You're right about one thing. It is entertainment, until someone gets hurt." He walked out of the clubhouse as cameras trailed behind him, though none of that footage ever reached the evening news. Jerome caught up outside. "You okay?" Samuel nodded. "I'm fine. Just tired of pretending." Neither of them spoke about that day again, not until the interview, when Samuel later told Brian Kelly that what he heard was, "beyond anything I'd ever heard from a sitting president." This was the moment he meant, the moment when Trump dropped his guard and said the kinds of things people only say when they think no one will challenge them. And Samuel knew that by finally speaking, he wasn't just stepping into a storm. He was lighting the fuse on purpose. But while Samuel was trying to move on, America was just beginning to erupt. By midnight, his interview had taken over the internet. News alerts lit up phones. Talk shows replayed it non-stop. Social media flooded with comments, support, outrage, disbelief. No one ignored it. Clips of his calm delivery, his steady stare, and that now iconic line, "You can't lead a country when you don't respect half the people living in it," spread like wildfire. It didn't just trend, it consumed everything. Morning broadcasts rolled out montages of reactions. On one network, a conservative pundit accused Jackson of reviving his career by attacking the president. On another, a civil rights lawyer called it one of the most honest moments Hollywood has offered in years. At a diner in Clearwater, two men watched the replay. "He's got guts, I'll give him that," one said. "Yeah, but guts don't make him right," the other replied. "You think Trump's the first president to say something wild behind closed doors?" It wasn't just political, it got personal. Families argued over breakfast, co-workers whispered in break rooms, even people who didn't care about politics had an opinion about the Samuel thing. The clip dominated everything, even international news. A BBC anchor introduced it as a rare Hollywood confrontation shaking Washington. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Samuel woke up to hundreds of missed calls, his agent, his publicist, half the industry. Everyone wanted to know if he understood what he'd unleashed. That he sat at his kitchen table scrolling through comments, praise, anger, threats, support. Celebrities privately messaged him. Some worried, some proud. His longtime friend, actress Denise Hollow, called first. "Sam, do you know what's happening online right now?" "Yeah," he said. "Apparently I started World War III from my chair." "You said what everyone else was too scared to say," she told him. "Just be ready for the fire." He chuckled. "I've been through worse fires." But the blaze was already growing. By noon, reporters crowded outside his home, news vans lined the street. Microphones pointed at his door. Samuel didn't speak, just waved and got into his car. Inside the White House, things were different. The communications team watched the clip again and again. "We need a response before noon," one aide said. Another sighed. "If we ignore it, it dies. If he responds, it explodes." Everyone knew exactly which choice Trump would make. At 11 a.m., the first tweet hit, washed-up actor Samuel L. Jackson making up stories again. "Hollywood will say anything for ratings." Sad, within minutes, it was headline news. Live anchors interrupted broadcasts. Well, one of them said, that didn't take long. Across the country, people watched as the story split America in two. Those who backed Samuel saw a truth-teller, those who backed Trump saw an attack. Those who stood with Trump saw Samuel as a traitor, someone turning on his own country. The online comment sections were vicious. "Go back to acting," one wrote. Another said, "Finally, someone told the truth." Samuel didn't answer any of it, not the tweets, not the outrage, not the noise. He stayed silent. That evening, a clip surfaced of a reporter shouting a question at him outside a Beverly Hills restaurant. "Mr. Jackson, do you regret what you said?" Samuel stopped, looked straight into the camera, and replied, "No. I regret not saying it sooner." That line exploded online within hours. T-shirts, memes, banners, his words were printed everywhere. The country was split, but the momentum was undeniably in his favor. Every attempt to discredit him only made him look more grounded. Political analysts dissected the moment on every network. One commentator on CNN said, "This isn't about a celebrity. It's about truth versus perception. Jackson just forced America to decide which one it believes." Then, just before midnight, something unexpected hit the internet. A leaked video from that Palm Beach golf event. A short clip showing Trump, Samuel, and a few others laughing near the 10th hole. It didn't prove anything by itself, but it confirmed the event happened exactly the way Samuel said it did, and that was enough to turn speculation into belief. Gossip became evidence. Talk show fodder turned into a national debate. Late-night hosts pounced immediately. Comedian Troy Randall opened his monologue with, "Samuel L. Jackson just said what Alexa's been too scared to." The audience erupted, but under the jokes, something deeper was stirring. People started asking, what kind of private comments could be bad enough for Samuel to react like that, and who else might have heard them? While the public argued, the White House prepared to strike back, much harder than anyone expected. By sunrise, the clash between Hollywood and Washington had erupted into full-on warfare. Cable news anchors called it the biggest celebrity political showdown since Reagan's era. Others said it was a masterclass in presidential fury. Whatever it was, it consumed every conversation in America. Inside the West Wing, tension snapped like static, not the energizing kind, the kind that makes staffers whisper and tempers flare. Phones buzzed non-stop, reporters crowded the White House gates. Every aide who passed the briefing area felt the pressure. At 7:15 a.m., Trump stormed into the communications room. His hair was unkempt, his expression sharp, his voice booming. "Who told me he was harmless?" he shouted, slamming his phone on the table. "That actor just called me racist on national TV." A staffer tried to calm him. "Mr. President, he didn't call you racist directly." Trump cut her off. "He didn't have to. You think people don't know what he meant?" He pointed angrily at the TV, where Samuel's interview was looping again. The caption beneath Trump's reflection read, "You can't lead a country when you don't respect half the people living in it." The communications director, Paula Myers, stepped up. "Sir, if we ignore it, the story will burn out." "But if you respond." "I already responded," Trump snapped, gesturing toward his phone. "You saw my tweet." Paula inhaled slowly. "Yes, sir. But your tweet is making things worse. The networks say it proves you're rattled." "I'm not rattled," Trump barked. "I'm angry. There's a difference." No one dared correct him. Outside on the South Lawn, reporters hammered Press Secretary Ron Ralston with questions. "Will the president apologize to Samuel L. Jackson?" one asked. Ralston let out a cold laugh. "Apologize for what? The president did nothing wrong. Mr. Jackson is an actor trying to stay relevant." Another reporter pressed, "So you're saying the conversation never happened?" Ralston hesitated, just long enough for the cameras to catch it. "I'm saying Mr. Jackson's version is dramatic." That clip aired on every major network within the hour. By noon, the White House released a polished statement denying the president made any inappropriate remarks. But the wording was slippery. It didn't deny the meeting, only disagreed with the characterization. That careful language only raised more red flags. At the afternoon press briefing, Ralston tried to maintain control. "The president speaks with countless individuals daily. He is confident in his relationships across industries and rejects any attempt to twist casual remarks into scandal." A reporter fired back, "So you're confirming he did speak to Mr. Jackson?" Ralston adjusted his tie. "I'm confirming the president meets a lot of people." Laughter erupted from the press corps. Ralston's face reddened. The briefing ended abruptly. Meanwhile, in California, Samuel watched everything unfold from his living room, the blinds half closed, the TV muted. Jerome called again. "They're falling apart, man. You saw that briefing, they look like they're guessing." "That's what happens when you tell the truth," Samuel said. "People panic when they can't control the story." Jerome hesitated. "You sure you want to keep this going? They'll dig up everything, old interviews, photos, anything they can twist." "Let them," Samuel replied. "I've got nothing to hide." That night, Trump held a rally in Pensacola. The crowd was electric, flags waving, signs everywhere, chants echoing, and when Trump brought up Samuel's name, the arena erupted again. "I've known a lot of actors." Trump leaned toward the microphone, voice rising. This one's got a bad attitude," he said. "He thinks he can insult your president and get away with it. Not on my watch." The crowd roared, and Trump soaked it in, smiling wide as the cheers surged. "He's out there saying I said terrible things. Lies. Total lies," he continued, chopping the air with his hand. "I was nothing but nice to him. Asked him to join my foursome. But you know these Hollywood types, they don't appreciate anything." The clip spread instantly, not because of his words, but because of the fury behind them. His voice cracked, gestures sharp. Supporters called it strength. Everyone else called it fear. By sunrise, fact-checking pages were filled with photographic comparisons, timestamps from the club, witness statements. Trump's denial was falling apart, thread by thread. Yet the administration doubled down. Fox pundits blasted Jackson as Hollywood's new attack dog. Commentators accused him of tearing the country apart. America was split down the center now. Half the nation believed Samuel L. Jackson had uncovered something ugly. The other half insisted he made it all up for attention. Meanwhile, the man at the center of the storm seemed almost unnervingly still. No apologies. No frantic statements. He was waiting. 2 days after the Pensacola rally, Samuel agreed to appear on Good Morning America. Producers had pushed for it for days, and after watching the White House twist his words, he finally gave in. The studio was packed, every seat filled, lights washing the set in bright, metallic white. When he stepped out, the audience rose, not for a movie star, but for a man standing in a political firestorm, refusing to flinch. Host Robin Torres opened gently. "Samuel, it's been a wild few days. The president says you're lying. Some networks question your motives. Why speak out now?" He leaned forward, hands clasped. Because silence is how power keeps winning. People talk big behind closed doors, and the rest of us pretend we didn't hear it. I just decided I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Robin nodded. You've said others were present during that golf event. Are any of them willing to come forward? He smiled faintly. Maybe. Let's just say I wasn't the only one who remembers that day. A low ripple spread through the studio audience, so there were witnesses. She pushed, his gaze didn't waver. I'm not naming names. But yeah, people heard what I heard. They're just scared. I get it. When you speak out against power, the whole machine turns on you. The interview aired live. Within minutes, clips flooded social feeds. Hashtags exploded, I stand with Samuel and Trump versus Jackson climbing to the top of trending lists. Networks broke into scheduled programming to replay the exchange. Inside the White House, aides scrambled. Someone suggested finding evidence Samuel wasn't at the club, but photos had already proven he was. Pressure mounted as reporters dug deeper, then Hollywood insiders began to stir. A well-known director posted, I was at that event. He's not lying. The post vanished hours later, but screenshots were everywhere. Next came retired baseball legend Jerome Tate, the same friend who'd brought Samuel to the club. TMZ caught him outside a training facility in Tampa. Were you with Samuel that day at Trump's club? A reporter asked. Jerome hesitated. Yeah. I was there. Did the conversation happen like he said? He paused, thinking carefully. Let's just say, I remember enough to understand why he spoke up. The clip hit every major platform overnight. Suddenly the debate wasn't about allegations anymore. It was about credibility. Two public figures were now subtly backing Samuel's account at the same time. Trump unleashed another barrage of tweets, calling Samuel ungrateful, phony, a Hollywood radical. But this time, the tone fell flat. Even some conservative hosts began to question whether the administration was overreacting. That evening, Samuel had dinner quietly in Sherman Oaks. No entourage. No security. Just a few friends trying to enjoy a meal. A waiter approached timidly. Mr. Jackson, my mom watched your interview. She cried. She said it felt like someone finally said what we've all been thinking. Samuel smiled. Tell your mom I said thank you. As the waiter walked away, Denise Hollow leaned in. You know you've basically become the people's actor now, right? He chuckled softly. I didn't plan any of this. I just told the truth. That's why it worked. She said that he hadn't expected his words to ignite like this. But once they did, he refused to water them down. If you start walking back your truth, he said later in an interview, it stops being truth. It becomes performance. And I've done enough pretending for one lifetime. The next morning, the Los Angeles Tribune ran a front-page headline, Jackson won't blink. Commentators picked it up, calling him the Hollywood conscience. Some mocked the phrase. Others embraced it. Either way, Samuel was no longer just an actor, he had become a voice. Meanwhile, whispers spread through Palm Beach. Employees who had worked at the golf event began speaking anonymously to journalists, saying they'd heard tension, uneasy remarks. One even hinted that security footage might still exist. Samuel didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it, that he simply stayed steady and said during an interview, people will see what they need to see when they're ready. I don't need to convince anyone. The truth has its own timeline. With that, Samuel walked off the set, leaving viewers staring at their screens in a hush that felt heavier than words. But while he remained calm inside the storm, Hollywood was starting to tremble. Too many people had been at that golf event. Too many had heard pieces of the same conversation. And they knew the truth was about to get louder. By the end of the week, the conversation had blown past politics. It wasn't just Samuel versus Trump anymore. It was Hollywood versus itself. The whispers that usually stay behind mansion gates were spilling into the streets. In morning cafes in Studio City, producers leaned in close over lattes, speaking in low, nervous tones. Some praised Samuel's courage. Others cursed him under their breath. "He just put a target on all of us," one agent grumbled, twirling his espresso spoon. The story was impossible to ignore. That Friday night, the Screen Actors Guild hosted a private dinner at a Beverly Hills hotel, an event that was supposed to be a peaceful industry gathering. Instead, it turned into a battlefield. Tables splintered into factions arguing about whether Samuel had crossed a line. Director Avery Knox slammed down his drink. He said what needed to be said. Who else has the guts to challenge a president live on air? Veteran producer Leonard Hayes shook his head. You don't go to war with the most powerful man in the world unless you're ready to lose everything. He's risking careers, ours included. At a nearby table, whispers circled that someone present had actually been at the Palm Beach event. All heads turned toward Raymond Foxwell, a sharp-eyed studio executive known for his silence and his influence that he took a calm sip of wine. What he said wasn't exaggerated. The room froze. A reporter, who'd slipped in unnoticed, heard it. Within hours, gossip sites blasted headlines claiming top producer confirms Samuel's story. Foxwell denied it later, but the damage was done. Insiders started calling journalists, each eager to share their version of that day. Details varied, but the theme was identical. The remarks had happened, and they were ugly. Some recalled Trump joking about diversity quotas. Others said he'd made comments about who really controls Hollywood. Social media caught fire. Actors, directors, and comedians began choosing sides. One young actress tweeted, "Samuel didn't speak to create chaos. He spoke because silence was already killing people's voices." Minutes later, a conservative actor shot back, "We're entertainers, not activists. Some folks should stick to their lines." Suddenly the industry was at war with itself. Talk shows jumped on the moment. One night, comedian Chris Vaughn and actress Linda Sterling clashed live on air. "He told the truth," Linda insisted. "We all know what gets said in those rooms. We just pretend it doesn't matter so we can keep our jobs." "Truth or not," Chris fired back, "he's feeding division. You don't fight hate with more hate." The audience exploded, half cheers, half boos, but everything shifted when an anonymous email hit several journalists' inboxes. Someone claimed to have audio from the Palm Beach golf event, a recording supposedly captured by a clubhouse security microphone. Most dismissed it as another fake. Then Daily Chronicle investigative reporter Renee Hallbrook managed to obtain the file. She didn't publish it. Instead, she played it for a small circle of editors late at night. The audio was muffled, voices echoing, glasses clinking, but unmistakable phrases leaked through. A familiar voice laughed and said something about Hollywood pretending to be moral while cashing my checks. The laughter eased, followed by a quieter line that made everyone in that tiny room go still. "People think they run this industry. They don't. They just make noise." It wasn't perfectly clear, but it didn't need to be. Everyone recognized the cadence. By morning, the clip had leaked. 10 million views in hours. The caption read, "Is this the Trump-Jackson conversation caught on tape?" Authenticity was still under review, but the timing was catastrophic for the White House. News networks spent the entire day replaying it in slow motion, dissecting every syllable. Trump's legal team responded instantly, calling the audio fabricated garbage and threatening lawsuits against anyone who kept airing it. But the more they attacked, the faster the clip spread. Meanwhile, Samuel stayed silent. His publicist issued a single line, "Mr. Jackson is not commenting on the recording." His silence only fueled speculation. Friends urged him to speak up, to take control. "You don't fight truth with noise," he told Denise Hollow over the phone. "You wait. The truth always makes noise on its own." That same night, his old friend Jerome called again. "It's getting wild, man. People are terrified. Some of the guys from that day are talking to lawyers." "They should be scared," Samuel said quietly. "If that tape's real, they can't hide anymore." He stared out the window at the long stretch of Ventura Boulevard. For the first time, Los Angeles looked small, like a stage where the masks everyone wore were finally slipping. But just as Hollywood began tearing itself apart, a new figure emerged. Someone holding evidence that would change the entire story. Someone who could tip the balance once and for all. By now, the narrative had outgrown Hollywood. It was no longer celebrity drama. It was something far bigger. The story had stopped being gossip and turned into a mirror, reflecting the country's deepest divides. Everywhere you looked, people were picking sides. On cable news, anchors opened their shows with split-screen images, Samuel L. Jackson's calm interview on one side, Trump's fiery rally clips on the other. It felt like two Americas staring straight at each other, neither willing to blink. In small towns and big cities, conversations carried a heaviness they hadn't before. In diners, at churches, inside barber shops, the question floated everywhere, was he right to say it? At a barbershop in Dayton, Ohio, a group of men argued over the news flashing on the TV. He's an actor, one customer said. Reads lines for a living. What makes him the moral authority? The barber snapped, he was there. You think he'd risk his whole reputation if it wasn't real? People risk their reputations every day for attention, another man shot back. The argument grew so loud the shop owner turned up the TV just to drown them out. Across the country, demonstrations started forming. In Los Angeles, hundreds gathered outside CNN's building holding signs that read "We believe Samuel." In Washington, D.C., Trump supporters chanted Hollywood lies while waving flags. This wasn't just political. It was emotional, cultural, personal. Talk shows thrived on the chaos. Legal experts, psychologists, body language analysts, everyone weighed in. Some dissected Samuel's tone and posture, others analyzed Trump's hand gestures, calling them signs of defensive anger. Overnight, everyone became a specialist in something, but beneath all the debate, one truth kept rising. Every time the White House attacked Samuel, his support grew. His social media following tripled in a week. People began quoting his line, "Silence is how power keeps winning," as if it were a mantra. In Philadelphia, high school students held an open forum about truth and leadership. A teacher told her class, "It doesn't matter who said it. What matters is that we're finally asking what kind of behavior we accept from people in power." But in Texas, a talk radio host ranted for 3 days straight about Hollywood elites trying to run the country. His listeners flooded the station with calls, promising to boycott Samuel's films. Some even burned DVDs on live streams. Dramatic gestures that only made his name trend faster. Meanwhile, Samuel kept steady. No new interviews. No media tour. While the nation argued, he focused on something bigger, truth itself. One afternoon, his daughter called from Atlanta. "Dad, people at work were arguing about you today." "Good or bad?" he asked. "Both. But they're talking." He smiled softly. "That's all I ever wanted." Back in Washington, Trump's circle was cracking. His legal team raged over the leaked recording. Advisors couldn't agree on a plan. Someone suggested suing Samuel directly, but another reminded them that would open the door to the recording being reviewed in court. So Trump did what he always did, hit the stage. At a rally in Tulsa, he shouted, "These fake stories, these fake people, they're trying to divide us. But we're stronger than them." The crowd roared, but even through the camera, there was a fatigue beneath the noise. The rallies were shorter now, the outrage louder but less convincing. Even loyal supporters were starting to look tired. Late-night comedians joked that people were arguing about Samuel L. Jackson and Trump like they were rooting for rival sports teams. And, honestly, it felt true. Then a quiet moment broke through the noise. During a Sunday service in Detroit, a pastor stood before his congregation and said, "Whether you love or hate either man, remember this, truth doesn't need a side. It just needs courage." The clip went viral instantly. Millions watched. For the first time, people weren't arguing politics, they were talking conscience. Sensing the shift, the White House scrambled. They pushed new policy headlines, scheduled more rallies, even tried floating rumors about Samuel's political ambitions. But the public wasn't buying it. Pollsters reported something stunning: most Americans believed Samuel was telling the truth. They didn't all like him. But they trusted him more than Washington. And that terrified the people in charge. In Los Angeles, Samuel sat on his back porch, scrolling through clips of protests and debates. The glow of the phone lit his face. He wasn't smiling. He was thinking. Denise called him. "You've become a symbol," she said quietly. "That's not what I wanted." "Maybe not. But symbols aren't chosen. They're made." He exhaled slowly. "If I'm going to be a symbol, I want it to stand for something real." The next morning, something surfaced that would do just that. And for the first time, the evidence didn't come from Hollywood or Washington, it came from someone with nothing to gain and everything to lose. The day began quietly. Then it detonated. At 6 in the morning, a local Palm Beach news station broke a story that would shake every part of the country. A maintenance technician at Trump National Golf Club had stepped forward. He said he had undeniable proof that Samuel L. Jackson's story was true. His name was Michael Reyes. A 38-year-old man who had never once sought the spotlight, and he was about to change everything. Michael had been working at the golf club for almost 10 years. He wasn't a celebrity, wasn't rich, wasn't active in politics, just a quiet guy who cut grass, repaired sprinklers, and did his job without drawing attention. But that morning, his entire world shifted. He sat down for an exclusive interview with the Palm Beach Ledger, half his face hidden in the studio lighting. "I never planned to be part of this," he began. "But I watched the news, watched people calling him a liar, and I just couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore." The interviewer leaned in. "So what exactly did you witness that day?" Michael inhaled slowly. "I was working near the 10th hole, setting up things for the dinner event later that night. The president was there with his group. I recognized Samuel L. Jackson immediately. They were laughing at first, everything seemed normal. Then suddenly the energy shifted. It got strangely quiet." He paused. "And then I heard something. Let's just say it wasn't the kind of thing you expect from a president." He hesitated, gathering courage. Comments about who controls Hollywood, who profits, who complains about fairness. It wasn't banter. It wasn't humor. There was bite in it, it was ugly. The interviewer pushed gently. "So you're saying you personally heard the president make these offensive remarks?" Michael nodded, steady but uneasy. "Yes. Every word." Within hours, clips of the interview spread across the internet. Major outlets jumped on it instantly. CNN framed it as, "Golf employee backs Jackson's account," Fox News called it, "another liberal fabrication." Online, it was chaos, hashtags, debates, endless threads analyzing every phrase he spoke. The White House fired back within 2 hours. A spokesperson dismissed it as, "another staged distraction," but behind closed doors, aides were in full panic mode. That afternoon, during the press briefing, a reporter confronted Ron Ralston. "Will the administration investigate the claims made by the club employee?" Ralston let out a tired sigh. "We don't react to every unknown person chasing 15 minutes of fame." Another reporter shot back immediately. "He's not unknown. He's worked there for 10 years. Are you implying a longtime staff member would risk everything to lie?" Ralston faltered, stumbled over his words, then abruptly ended the briefing. By evening, Michael Reyes was trending everywhere. Journalists dug through his history, clean record, no political contributions, nothing pointing to personal gain. He had even turned down payment for the interview. "I'm not doing this for money," he said. "I just want the truth out there." Meanwhile, Samuel Jackson watched the entire firestorm unfold from his living room. Denise Hollow called him almost instantly. "You watching this?" she asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "He just blew the whole thing open." Samuel let out a slow breath. That guy did what most people with power never do, he told the truth even though he didn't owe anyone anything. Later that night, he phoned his old friend Jerome. "You remember that day?" Samuel said softly. "You know what was said?" "I do. He's putting everything on the line to back up what we both heard. That takes guts." Jerome paused. "You think it's going to make a difference?" Samuel hesitated. "It already has. Across the country, Talk shows lit up with speculation. Analysts debated Michael's motives. Others praised his courage. One anchor summed it up: "This isn't about politics anymore. This is about conscience." Meanwhile, Michael's life was turning inside out. By dawn, reporters crowded outside his modest home in Lake Worth. He looked uncomfortable under the spotlight, repeating that all he wanted was honesty. His wife stood beside him, voice soft but firm. "We knew this would be hard." But staying silent felt worse. The image of the two of them, ordinary people standing on their porch, facing a swarm of cameras, struck something in millions watching from home. Back in Washington, the president's advisors scrambled. Some wanted a lawsuit. Others urged him to stay quiet. Trump chose the opposite. At 7 a.m., he tweeted, "Fake story. Low-level employee who never met me making up lies for attention. Total scam." But within hours, photos surfaced of Trump shaking Michael's hand at a 2019 Marine recognition event. The caption from that day read, "Honoring loyal staff who keep our courses beautiful." The internet erupted. Late-night comedians pounced. One joked, "Hard to call the guy fake when you literally gave him an award." The studio audience roared, but underneath the humor, something bigger was building. That evening, the Daily Chronicle dropped a bombshell. Experts had authenticated the partial audio clip that many believed was fabricated. Their analysis pinpointed local bird calls heard only in that area, matched ambient sound to the layout of Trump National Golf Club, and confirmed the timing. Their conclusion: highly likely to be real. The story became impossible to shut down. Even people who initially ignored it had to face it now. Talk shows invited constitutional scholars to weigh in. Does a president's private speech reflect his public duty? Newspaper opinion pieces poured in, questioning whether character should matter as much as political performance. And through all the noise, Samuel remained silent, watching as truth began to rise on its own. That night, he switched off the TV and whispered to himself, "Sometimes you don't have to fight. You just have to let the truth catch up." But while truth was finally gaining ground, the political machinery was only beginning to move, and it was gearing up for a brutal fight by the next morning. The entire country was locked onto their screens. The story had reached full ignition, and now people weren't just watching, they were demanding answers. The leaked audio had been confirmed. The golf club employee's testimony had held up under scrutiny. Even some of Trump's closest defenders had gone quiet. Something in the national atmosphere was shifting. The White House scrambled to get ahead of the explosion, but the fire was already raging. Every attempt to minimize the situation only led to new evidence emerging. By midweek, 3 additional witnesses from the golf outing stepped forward anonymously, each verifying pieces of the same exchange Samuel had described. One was a catering manager who said he overheard remarks that definitely didn't sound like humor. Another, a private security contractor, admitted he had been instructed to keep media crews far from the 10th hole that afternoon. Each new account added weight, turning the administration's denials into something that looked less like confidence and more like desperation. Inside the Oval Office, the mood was electric with stress. Paula Myers, the communications director, paced the carpet, clutching briefing notes. "Sir," she said cautiously, "this is getting away from us. If we keep pushing back, it's going to look like we're hiding something." Trump slammed his fist on the desk. "We're not hiding anything. They're lying, and we'll prove it." "Prove it how?" Paula asked quietly. Trump stared at her, then said, "We sue them all. Jackson. That employee. The papers. The networks. Every one of them." Paula let out a long breath. "Sir, if you sue them, discovery opens up. That means they can request records, messages, even security footage. Are you sure that's what you want?" He didn't answer. He simply turned to the window, his reflection staring back in the glass like an accusation. Meanwhile, Samuel's home in Sherman Oaks felt strangely peaceful despite the chaos outside it. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Producers, politicians, activists, old colleagues he hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted him to speak, but Samuel chose silence, not because he was afraid, but because he believed the moment was bigger than him now. This wasn't his story anymore. It belonged to the people who witnessed it. Still, his team insisted he make one final public appearance. That evening, he sat down with Angela Reed on the Nightline Forum, the same program where everything had begun. The lights glowed softly against the polished set. The air felt thick, expectant. Angela leaned forward. "Samuel, this all started with a single comment you made on this show. Since then, the president has denied it, and yet more evidence keeps appearing. The nation is divided. What do you say to people who think you turned this into politics?" Samuel leaned back, thoughtful. "It's only political if you think respect belongs to one party. I didn't speak up to pick sides. I spoke up because leaders owe us accountability. If someone can't handle that, they shouldn't be in the job." The room fell completely silent. Angela pressed on. "Do you believe this will change anything?" His expression softened. "Maybe not instantly. But it's forced people to talk. It's made them think. That's where change begins, not in shouting, but in awareness." Then he looked straight into the camera. "You don't need fame to call out something that's wrong. You just need enough heart not to stay silent." The audience erupted, some clapped, some stood, a few even wiped away tears. Angela herself seemed moved. Back at the White House, staffers watched in a tense hush. Paula switched off the TV halfway through. "He's winning," she whispered. Ron Rolston, the press secretary, shook his head. "This isn't just winning. He's shifting the whole conversation." That night, polling revealed a sharp dip in public trust toward the president, even among moderates. At the same time, Samuel's approval surged, but everything changed the next day when the Daily Chronicle released the full, uncut audio from the golf course. 6 minutes long. No edits. No doubt, you could hear the casual chatter, the swing of clubs, and then Trump's unmistakable cadence. These Hollywood people act like saints when the cameras are on. They don't care about morals. They care about money. They pretend to hate me, but I made them richer than ever. Then came the line that froze the country: America doesn't need more truth tellers. It needs entertainers. That's what people really want, a good show. The recording ended with Samuel's voice heard faintly. Then maybe that's the problem. It was raw, unfiltered, undeniable. Networks cut into their programming to broadcast it. Analysts went quiet mid-sentence. Even conservative hosts stumbled to defend it. For the first time in weeks, the noise paused, and the truth spoke plainly. The next morning, Samuel's publicist called. "Every network wants you. They're calling this the quote of the decade." Samuel shook his head. "I'm done." The story spoke for itself. He turned off his phone, stepped outside into the early California sun, and for the first time since the whirlwind began, he smiled as neighbors applauded softly from across the street. Later that day, reporters shouted questions at the White House gates. "Does the president still stand by his remarks?" one asked. The press secretary froze, looked down, and walked away. The cameras captured every second. That image, an official avoiding the truth, defined the day. By evening, editorials flooded the nation from coast to coast. It became the moment America chose sincerity over spectacle, when Hollywood's honesty cut through political noise. The 6-minute recording that rattled a presidency gave the chaos purpose. But while the nation absorbed the shock, Samuel wasn't celebrating. He was thinking. Because a win, he believed, meant nothing unless it brought clarity, and when the storm finally began to ease, the country didn't look the same. The shouting quieted. The frenzy cooled, but the questions Samuel had raised still echoed in newsrooms, classrooms, and living rooms everywhere. For the first time in years, people weren't asking who to trust. They were asking why they had stopped trusting anyone at all. Samuel L. Jackson had never intended to wade into politics. That he wasn't trying to topple a president, spark a movement, or collect applause. Ironically, that was what made his words powerful. He spoke from unfiltered honesty, not calculation. In the weeks after the full audio went public, the national tone shifted. Late-night comedy grew subdued. News anchors stopped shouting over each other. Politicians who once mocked Samuel now quoted him. His line, "Silence is how power keeps winning," appeared on protest posters, classroom bulletin boards, and even tagged across brick walls downtown. But the biggest surprise was the reaction from people who had once dismissed him. In diners and Sunday gatherings throughout the Midwest, Even Trump supporters admitted, sometimes quietly, that the recording didn't sit right. "I still back him," one man told a reporter. "But I can't pretend that didn't sound wrong." That small admission, "I can't pretend," became the quiet heartbeat of America's reckoning. Back in Los Angeles, Samuel tried to keep his life ordinary. He said no to rallies, turned down interviews, spent mornings walking the same neighborhood streets, stopping at the same corner cafe he'd visited for years. People recognized him, of course. But instead of photos or autographs, they simply whispered, "Thank you." One morning, an older woman approached him with a Bible tucked under her arm. "Mr. Jackson," she began, "I don't agree with everything you said, but I believe you said it because you care." He smiled. "That's the only good reason to say anything." Moments like that, simple, sincere, felt rare in America, and somehow his act of honesty made room for them again. A reminder that disagreement didn't have to erase conversation. Inside the White House, the tone had darkened. Advisors told the president to drop it and move on, but he couldn't. Another flurry of tweets went out, louder in volume, weaker in impact, but the public had grown tired. Cable networks had moved forward, yet everything the administration said, every press briefing, every announcement, was now viewed through a single lens: credibility. And the irony wasn't lost on anyone that it wasn't Congress, the press, or political rivals that had damaged the president's image. It was one actor willing to talk about something most people would have buried. Months later, once the dust settled, Samuel attended a small charity event in Chicago for children's hospitals, an organization he'd quietly supported for years. Reporters gathered again, hoping for a new headline. He gave them one, but not the one they expected. Standing at a simple podium, he said, "Truth isn't entertainment. It isn't ratings. It isn't headlines. It's responsibility, and if we want to fix what's broken, we have to stop mistaking attention for honesty." The room fell still, then applause rose. Not loud, not theatrical, just deeply sincere. Outside, a reporter asked if he thought anything had changed. He smiled softly. "Change doesn't happen in a few weeks. It happens in the way people talk when no cameras are around. If we start listening, really listening, that's where it begins." And that had become the real story. Teachers used the Jackson moment, as some called it, to talk about integrity. Media classes studied it as a lesson in truth-telling. Online, months later, his words still surfaced whenever leaders dodged accountability. But the biggest shift wasn't broadcast on TV. It appeared quietly in everyday people, a slow return to conscience. A reminder that honesty still mattered, even when it wasn't easy. Jerome Tate, Samuel's longtime friend, captured it perfectly when a journalist asked his thoughts. "He didn't take anyone down," Jerome said. "He reminded America what integrity sounds like." Samuel hadn't just won an argument. He helped reset a nation's moral compass, one that had drifted toward convenience over conviction. As the year drew to a close, Samuel stepped out of the spotlight again. He went back to filming, reading scripts, living calmly, but his words stayed behind long after the cameras stopped rolling. The narrative was no longer about Trump's anger. It was about a man who chose honesty when it mattered most, and maybe that's the real lesson. Truth, once spoken, doesn't disappear. It echoes, because courage isn't loud. It's steady. It's a man under hot studio lights choosing principle over comfort, knowing a storm will follow, and speaking anyway. Samuel L. Jackson didn't just challenge a president. He challenged a nation to remember what dignity, decency, and truth looked like. And maybe years from now, people won't recall the controversy, they'll remember the conviction. Because when truth becomes inconvenient, that's exactly when it must be told. Silence might protect comfort. Courage protects integrity. If this story reached you, share it, discuss it, question what you hear, because truth survives only when people are brave enough to defend it, even when it costs them something real.